Hello, I'm Doug from Lambert Cybersecurity, and I'm going to be going over privilege escalation using Docker. So what we have here is a fairly generic version of Linux. Nothing really special about it at all. It's running in a virtual machine, fairly recently updated. What is different about it is I've installed Docker and I've installed a compiler. The big difference is I've given this user permission to run Docker as root. This is not an uncommon request for developers to be able to run Docker as root for them while they're doing their testing. What I'm going to show you is that you can pretty easily gain root access on any host where you can run Docker as root. So that there are some things that you need to do to protect yourself from that. All right, so let's go ahead and step through one of the ways to become root. First of all, I'm going to make a directory for us to work out of. I'm just going to name it Meadow. I'm going to change directory into there. All right, we want to create a new executable, so let's go ahead and create a source file. We'll name it bad lamb shell. I only need one include in here. And we need a main. Okay, so what do we want it to do? All right, so the first thing is that we want it to set UID to 0. So we're going to run this as a normal user, but we immediately want it to become root. And we also want it to change over to a different process. I want it to change over to become a shell, so I'm going to tell it to change over to become bin bash. The second argument for execl is just a name, a label. You can name it anything you want. The final argument is a pointer to null. Okay, and then we're going to return. Okay, so if that works, then we can go ahead and just compile it. Forgot to tell it to output. Okay. So we have an executable. It's owned by user blam, and it has execute permissions. But notice there's no set UID bit set. But we'll go over that here in a minute. So what happens if I execute this right now? So first of all, you can see that my current shell, its process ID is 3572. And I am user blam. So if we execute blam shell, you'll see that my process ID for my shell changed. So I am in a new shell, but I'm still user blam. So that set UID didn't work. The execl worked, but the set UID did not work. So let's go back to our original shell and see if we can get that to work. So 3572, I'm back in my original shell. So let's use Docker to do this. So I'm going to go back to my home directory, and I'm going to create a Docker file. And I'm going to pull from Ubuntu. You can pretty much pull from anything you want for this to work. And by default, these Docker containers run as root. You don't want to run as root. It's dangerous. So we're going to tell it what user to run as. Except in this case, I actually want to run as root. So I'm just going to leave that out. So all this Docker file tells it to do is pull from Ubuntu. So let's go ahead and create an image here. So sudo docker build st. We're going to name it Dark Meadow. Okay, let's see if it worked. Looks like it did. Okay, so I have a new repository named Dark Meadow. So let's go ahead and run a container. Sudo docker run --rm. That tells it to clean things up when the container finishes running. -v tells it to mount a volume. I want to mount that directory where that where that executable is located. I want to mount that inside the container while the container is running to /host. You can mount it anywhere you want. You pick a name. I picked /host. -V says to handle the SE Linux labels. I want to use that image that we created, Dark Meadow latest, and I want it to execute bin shell because I wanted to run some commands for me inside the container. I want it to change the ownership to root of that executable that we made. If that works, I want it to chmod E+S. I want it to set the UID bit is what that says. /host/ that executable. Okay. So assuming I don't have any typos, this will run a container. It is going to mount /home/vlam/meadow inside the container to a directory named host, and then it's going to change ownership of bad lamb shell and add the set UID bit to bad lamb shell. And I did have a typo. This should be Z. Man, I just got typos all over the place, don't I? So, forgot my capital S, capital L. All right, so let's see what happened. First of all, let's go ahead and look at that executable to see if anything actually changed with it. All right, you can see the color changed. That tells us something. But bad lamb shell is now owned by root. Most importantly, the set UID bit is now set. So that should allow that set UID to actually set the UID to 0 when we run bad lamb shell. So let's go ahead and run it. Actually, before we do that, let's just do this as a reminder. My current PID is 3572. My username is blam. Okay. My process ID for the shell is 8207. So I am in a new shell. And now I am root. So it worked. So what? What's the problem with this? Is it really a security issue that we need to be concerned about? So first of all, I'm not talking about a bring your own device situation where they already have admin or root access to their systems. And if you've already implemented zero trust, you have good defense in depth, this is only one client we're talking about. This isn't a major concern. But root access can help with credential harvesting, lateral movement, data exfiltration, DN escape attacks. Root access helps with those things. If root access isn't required on a client, then you shouldn't be giving it out to people. But hold on a second. Once you have access to a client, somebody who wants root access, it's just a matter of time until they get it. But we don't have to make it easy for them. What do we do about it? Don't run containers on a client. That's really the best answer here. However, not necessarily realistic. Sometimes people do need to run containers on a client. Sometimes developers need to be able to execute Docker commands as root. So this may not be a possibility. One technique that you could use is you actually take those Docker commands that need to be executed, you wrap those in a script, and you give sudo rights to execute that script. This sounds like a great idea, but again, it's problematic. Developers may not actually be able to predict all those Docker commands that they need to run. So the making that realistic to actually have scripts to do what they need to do, it's probably not going to work. Where this technique can work is if you have a situation where regular users need to launch containers on their clients for some reason, and it's a very standard or very predictable thing that they need to do, then you could wrap those Docker commands in a script and give them rights to execute those scripts as root. Do it safely, do it carefully. That can cause some pretty serious problems if you don't correctly protect those scripts. So what do you actually do about it? Defense in depth. That's one of the best answers. If you can create an environment where you aren't concerned about a user getting root access on their client system, then you're not going to be worried about this, and it's not going to keep you up at night. Monitoring actions. Your SIEM should be able to detect these type of activities, and not just the running Docker commands type activities, the actual what's going on behind the scenes. Uh, in the case of the example that we just went over, creating an executable with a set UID bit set, that's not a normal activity. Executing executables with the set UID bit, that is more of a normal activity, but we should also know what those executables are. They shouldn't be executables, other than the ones that we know about, like, password. And finally, prevent execution of those specific things. There are some products out there that are able to prevent execution of certain commands based off of regular expressions. You can probably do a pretty decent job of making it hard to execute a Docker command to escalate privileges based off of those regular expressions. So go ahead and take a look at those products and see if you can find one that meets your needs. Okay. Again, I'm Doug Carroll. Thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate it. And this was Lambert Cyber Security. You have a great day.